Hey guys, Solid here. Hope you're all doing well and welcome back to another episode of the Wish You Were Here series. Today we're talking about the Kawasaki Versys-X 400. So many people want this bike, so let's talk about why it isn't here yet, what's holding Kawasaki back, what specifications we want to see if Kawasaki ever do get to it, and lastly, the likelihood of this actually making it to the market. So let's make the case for the Kawasaki Versys-X 400.
Start it up.
We should really clarify what we want to see. And I think this bike is very different to my previous video that I made on the Tenere 300. This bike has very different strengths, and I think we should stick with what the Versys-X 300 is really good at. And that is being an affordable adventure tourer, something that can do a little bit of everything. It can do the open highway, commuting, and it can do light off-road duties as well. Think of it as a very affordable version of a GS. I think they're a fantastic little bike, and they're filling quite a good little niche. Much like the CB500X, they're just great all-round adventure tourers. So I think the X400 should stay in that lane as well. It would all get very same if every time I talk about unicorn hardcore rally bike. That's not what this bike is about. This is a fantastic little adventure tourer. So what's the case for a 400 when we already have a 300? If you've ridden the 300, as fantastic as that motor is, it just doesn't have much power down low. It is pretty impressive considering how small of a motor it is, and we like small motors around here. There's only so much a little parallel twin can do, and it really is showing its sport bike heritage here because there really isn't any power and most importantly torque down low. Whereas the 400 engine, yes, it's still revvy, and yes, it still makes its peak power up high, but it's not so extreme like the little 300. So let's go through the power characteristics of both motors. So the 300 makes around 38 horsepower if you're being optimistic, and 27 newton meters of torque. That doesn't sound too bad for a little 300cc engine, and it's not. The problem comes with where it makes that power in the rev range. Peak horsepower is made at 11,000 RPM. Peak torque is at 10,000 RPM, and that really renders the little 300 not that much fun, particularly when you're really needing to get moving in low RPM situations. Very, very difficult. And for a lot of people, this isn't just an adventure bike. This is also a commuter and a daily rider. Having a little more torque down low is really going to improve things, and I'm sure I don't need to tell everyone here that having more torque down low and accessible is always going to improve your off-road experience. So let's look at the 400, which makes 48 horsepower at 10,000 RPM and 38 newton meters of torque at 8,000 RPM, which is significantly lower. I think just swapping out those engines themselves will render you a massive increase in usable torque, but it also gives you a significant power increase. You'll be getting more in every part of the rev range, which will really improve the riding experience in my opinion. The other thing to talk about here is the Ninja 300 versus the Ninja 400. Now, why am I talking about this? Well, weight. And it's really interesting that the Ninja 300 is actually about 4 kilos heavier than the Ninja 400. And very positive news if we were to move to an X400, that means we could possibly drop some weight from the X300. So what do we want to see spec-wise? I think this is one of those few videos where I really don't have to go into detail as to what I want out of this motorcycle. The Versys-X 300 is such a great platform. I think they should keep most of what makes that great. I don't think there need to be big changes here. I'm not looking for a 450 rally bike from Kawasaki. I'm looking for an X300 with the 400 motor in it because I want another great affordable adventure tourer. So this is what I'm going to focus on in this video. So I want that big tank, the same wind protection, luggage carrying capacity, a decent amount of travel for adventure touring, nothing crazy. Keep those spoke wheels, as that's a rarity in this market and it is my preference for anything that is going off-road. Freshen it up to make it more modern because it's been out a while. It's decent enough for short riders. They can still get their feet on the ground. The one thing I might change though is update that seat. I wasn't the biggest fan of it when I rode the X300. My butt started to get sore after about 30 minutes. If I'm really being picky, I'd love to see them drop the weight a little bit and manage to do it with the Ninja 400. So maybe they could do it with the X400 as well. So I think the biggest one to point out here is a lot of people are going to say just put the 400 in the 300 frame and call it a day. Currently not possible. The 400 just won't go into the Versys-X 300 frame. That's one of the major reasons I think that Kawasaki have not really bothered, at least for the Western market. The other thing here is it's very tempting for manufacturers just to focus on middleweights and heavyweight bikes because of the overhead they can make when selling the bike. There's not as much money to be gained in pumping out affordable motorcycles. If Kawasaki were to put some energy into making a newly updated adventure bike, it would probably be in the middleweight or heavyweight, freshening up the 650 to make it more dirt capable, or their big flagship Versys. The other elephant in the room, pun intended here, is the KLR 650. What that KLR does is pretty much what the Versys X400 would probably do. It would cannibalize the sales of the KLR 650. Given how much Kawasaki has just put into freshening up the KLR 650 to get it past all the emission standards with EFI, it probably isn't a good idea to then put a whole pile of money into the X400 and then ruin the sales of your KLR 650s. The other reason Kawasaki haven't put the effort in developing an X400 is the fact that the 400 cannot be turned into a 250. Now, why is that significant? Well, the 300 can. So that means the 300 can go to a whole different pile of countries that the 400 just can't go. A lot of markets, particularly in Asia, have graded systems where it is more expensive the bigger bike you have. Having one motorcycle for the Western market in the 400 and developing a whole new frame to accommodate that engine, and then having the 300/250 everywhere else, is going to increase costs. So that was a whole load of depressing reality there for the 400, but I still think there's a great case for this bike existing, and I think it really would be quite popular. As I spoke, that motor would just be perfect. It's big enough that you can really do everything, but not so big that it's going to be super expensive. I think it's one of those bikes that will just be an affordable for the masses adventure tourer, and there aren't too many of those around, so I think Kawasaki really could still make a case for making this bike. Look at how popular the Z400 and the Ninja 400 are in their respective categories. I don't think it would be any stretch of the imagination that a Versys X400 would be just as popular in the adventure world. It's certainly the kind of bike I would be looking for my commuting, my long touring, and saving some money, because money is getting tight these days, and I certainly am squeamish to spending big bucks on a large adventure bike these days. I'd love to see something like the X400, but let me know what you think. Do you think the 300 really needs that engine upgrade, or are you happy with what you got and the 300 is doing just fine as is? Let me know in the comment section down below, and as always, don't forget to stay shiny side up, and I'll see you in the next one. Catch you later.